Have you ever wondered why passenger planes can enter the airspace of other countries? If it is a long-distance flight, they also pass through the airspace of many countries. Can we really just cross the airspace in the airspace of other countries? The truth is, of course. You can't just fly over other countries' airspace. Countries must first sign an agreement on air traffic rights. With the authorization of this agreement, before you can travel between countries. Today, we're going to simulate Korean Air Flight 902 shooting down, April 20, 1978. Daehang Air. Flight 902 was carrying 97 passengers and 12 crew members preparing to fly from Paris, France to Seoul, Korea, with a stopover in Alaska, USA, to avoid the Soviet Union's leading workers, who were in a tense relationship at the time. The captain of Korean Air Flight 902 was 46-year-old Kim Chong-kyu. There were also two other people in the cockpit, the co-pilot, Cha Soon-do, and flight engineer Lee Kuan-ji. The direct flight was a Boeing 707, which first flew in 1967. Boeing 707, it was the first jet technology developed by Boeing, with 4 engines. It also used older navigation equipment, although the technology was already superb at the time. At 1:39 p.m., DAL Flight 902 departed Paris-Orly International Airport without incident and climbed to a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, from Paris, France, to Korea. The flight could have gone directly to southeast to Korea, but during the Cold War and the total airspace blockade, the airliners had to fly around. They had to divert north over England to the United States after crossing the Norway Strait, after refueling in Alaska, before they could continue on to Korea. 7:00 p.m. sharp. DL Flight 902 last reported its position. It was over a base in Canada. It was the northernmost base on Earth at the time. The crew then followed the compass and corrected the course. They made a big turn to the right. Captain Jean Chong. When the plane was changing its geomagnetic bearing, referring to the wrong magnetic declination mark, resulting in a significant deviation from the aircraft's actual heading. From its normal heading. But inadvertently headed southeast to the Soviet Union. After flying for about 2 hours, at 8:54 p.m. Soviet anti-aircraft radar picked up DL Flight 902. The flight was only 400 miles from Soviet territorial waters. The Soviets tried to contact the flight several times. But never got a response. They issued an emergency situation and sent a fighter jet into the air to intercept the flight. At 9:19 p.m. Korean Air Flight 902 has entered Soviet airspace. The captain saw the fighter jet beside him and realized that he might have entered another country by mistake. He tried to contact the Soviet Union on frequency 121.5 emergency channel to try to contact the Soviet fighters, but never got a response. Many passengers also noticed the plane. The entire plane was in an uproar. At that moment, Soviet fighters approached from the right to intercept Flight 902. After following the target for some distance, they determined that Flight 902, it was an American 2C-135 converted from a Boeing 707. Electronic reconnaissance aircraft. According to the pilot of the aircraft, Basofo, he repeatedly signaled the pilot with his wing. To follow the plane to land. The captain of Flight 902 reduced speed, turned on his navigation lights. He indicated that he was willing to follow the Soviet fighter to land, but due to the language barrier, neither side understood what the other meant. So the captain of Flight 902 decided to turn 90 degrees to the right, towards the Finnish border. Trying to stay out of Soviet airspace, but to the fighter pilots, this was a standard evasive maneuver. Trying to get away from the Soviet fighters and prepare to escape Soviet Union. The fighter pilots reported the incident to headquarters. This added to the already tense atmosphere as Flight 902 gradually headed for Finland. They only needed 6 minutes to leave Soviet airspace, but the Soviets thought that this American RC-135 electronic reconnaissance aircraft has picked up some important data. Preparing to escape from Soviet warplanes, Soviet warplanes fired 2 missiles at 9:42. The first missed. The second hit the memory of Flight 902. Missile fragments exploded into the passenger cabin. Rapid pressure was applied inside the cabin. The Korean passenger, Hwang Bante, who was sitting in the 23rd row, he was killed instantly, and Kazuko Mano in row 24 was also seriously injured by shrapnel. The captain saw the rapid pressure in the cabin from the instruments. An emergency descent was initiated. Oceanic Flight 902 made an emergency descent to 5,000 feet. The captain briefly checked the damage. Although the number 4 engine was damaged, fortunately, the control system was still available, but at this point, he could not risk flying to the surface. That he lowered the plane to 3,000 feet and headed for land. The flight re-entered Soviet territory and tried to find an airport where he could land. Or a road. But in the sparsely populated north, there was only snow. There were no airports where they could land. The captain was barely able to fly the damaged plane and actually tried to insist on flying for an hour and 40 minutes, although he tried to land several times. But all ended in failure. He flew close to the ground the whole way and the fuel was about to run out. Just then the captain spotted a frozen lake. The captain was like Columbus discovering a new land. Finally, there was a suitable place to land. The captain was worried about the ice, whether it could withstand the heavy landing of the Boeing 707 aerobatics. But at this point there is no choice. We had to make a forced landing. The captain decided to land on the frozen lake. In fact, the landing was very successful. The plane did not disintegrate and did not explode. However, Yoshiko Kano, who was seriously injured, lost too much blood. Too much blood was lost and she died. In total, 2 people were killed and 107 survived the incident. 2 hours later, Soviet rescue teams arrived at the scene. The remains of the victims, the wounded, and children to a nearby hospital for treatment. The rest of the people were investigated and were returned to the representatives of Pan Am. 5 years later, almost exactly the same cause, Korean Air. The Soviet Union used the same fighter jet. The Soviets shot down another Korean Air commercial airliner. All 269 people on board Korean Air Flight 007 were killed. This crash has been updated earlier. May such accidents never happen again. The warning bell rings long.